Nobody came to the billionaire's daughter's first birthday party until a maid's toddler showed up. Victoria Ashford stood in the center of her daughter's first birthday party, surrounded by thousands of dollars worth of decorations, and felt utterly alone. The grand ballroom of the Ashford estate gleamed with pink and gold everything, balloons imported from France, a 5-tier cake from the city's most exclusive bakery, a petting zoo in the garden, and enough party favors to fill a small store. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across tables laden with food most of the invited guests had never even heard of. But those guests hadn't come. At 33, Victoria had built an empire in tech that made her one of the youngest female billionaires in the country. She'd conquered boardrooms, revolutionized software, and graced the covers of business magazines. But she couldn't get a single parent to bring their child to her daughter's birthday party. Little Emma sat in her high chair, her dark curls topped with a ridiculous designer birthday crown, chubby hands reaching for the cake she wasn't allowed to touch yet. She babbled happily, oblivious to the fact that the 20 other high chairs arranged around the ballroom stood empty. Oblivious to her mother's heartbreaking. "Mrs. Ashford?" The event coordinator approached hesitantly, clipboard clutched to her chest. "It's been 45 minutes past the start time. Should we begin anyway?" Victoria forced a smile, the same one she used in difficult board meetings. "Let's give it a few more minutes." But she knew. She'd known even as she'd sent out the invitations 3 weeks ago. She'd invited every family, with young children from Emma's music class, her swimming lessons, even children of her business associates. 20 families. Platinum-edged invitations delivered by courier. Every single one had RSVP'd yes. Every single one had lied. Victoria walked to the window overlooking the garden where a professional photographer waited beside the petting zoo. Miniature ponies, dwarf goats, and fluffy rabbits stood in their pens, their handlers looking bored. A face painter sat at her station, paints drying in the afternoon sun. The balloon artist had already started scrolling through his phone. She'd wanted everything to be perfect. After Emma's father left 2 months into the pregnancy, unable to handle the complication of a child interfering with Victoria's demanding schedule, she'd vowed to give her daughter everything. Every advantage, every opportunity, every beautiful moment. But she couldn't give Emma what she needed most: friends. A community. A normal childhood. The problem, Victoria knew, was her. Or rather, her reputation. She'd built her company with ruthless efficiency, had little patience for incompetence, and expected everyone to maintain her impossibly high standards. She'd fired people for being late, had zero tolerance for excuses, and was known to send emails at 3 in the morning expecting immediate responses. The business world respected her. Parents feared her. She'd heard the whispers at music class pickup, seen the way other mothers grabbed their children's hands, and hurried away when she approached. She'd overheard a conversation at swimming lessons. "Can you imagine being a kid in that house? Probably has scheduled playtime and performance reviews." Laughter had followed. The rejection stung, but she'd told herself it didn't matter. Emma was only turning 1. She wouldn't remember. But Victoria would. Victoria would remember standing in this beautiful, empty room, watching her daughter's first birthday pass without a single guest. "Mama?" Emma called out, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. Victoria turned, pasting on brightness she didn't feel. "Yes, sweet girl?" Emma held out her arms, and Victoria went to her, lifting her daughter from the high chair and holding her close. Emma smelled like baby shampoo and innocence. She tucked her head against Victoria's neck, perfectly content. "Maybe we don't need anyone else," Victoria whispered into her daughter's hair. But even as she said it, she felt the loneliness settle deeper into her bones. The sound of the doorbell echoed through the house, and Victoria's heart leaped. Someone had come. She'd been wrong. They weren't all cruel. Someone had. Her assistant Maria appeared in the doorway, looking apologetic. "I'm so sorry to interrupt, Mrs. Ashford, but Rosa is here." I told her about the party and that she should take the day off, but she insisted she'd left something in the kitchen yesterday and needed to. It's fine, Victoria said, trying to hide her disappointment. Rosa was the housekeeper, a 28-year-old woman who'd been with them for 6 months. Quiet, efficient, practically invisible. Tell her to take whatever she needs. Maria nodded and disappeared. Victoria carried Emma toward the cake, deciding they might as well get started. The photographer could take pictures of just the two of them. The party performers could perform for an audience of one. They'd paid for it all anyway. Then she heard it, another voice, high-pitched and excited, echoing from the direction of the kitchen. Mama. Big balloons. Pretty. Victoria turned to see Rosa rushing back into the ballroom, her face flushed with embarrassment. In her arms was a little girl with the same dark hair and warm brown eyes, wearing a slightly worn dress, but a bright, eager expression. Mrs. Ashford, I'm so sorry, Rosa said, nearly stumbling over her words. I couldn't get a sitter, and I just needed to grab my daughter saw the decorations from the hallway and ran in. I'm so sorry. We're leaving right now. But Victoria wasn't looking at Rosa. She was looking at Emma, whose entire face had lit up at the sight of another child. Emma was leaning forward in Victoria's arms, hands outstretched, making her excited squealing sound. And Rosa's daughter, Victoria realized she'd never even known the woman had a child, was reaching back, eyes wide with wonder at the ballroom transformed into a birthday paradise. Baby, Rosa's daughter declared. Baby birthday? For the first time in hours, Victoria smiled genuinely. Yes, she said softly. Baby birthday. She looked at Rosa, really looked at her for the first time in 6 months. Saw the exhaustion around her eyes, the calluses on her hands, the worry in her expression. Saw a mother who worked multiple jobs to provide for her daughter, who cleaned other people's houses while probably wondering if her own child was being properly cared for. What's your daughter's name? Victoria asked. Sophia, Rosa answered hesitantly. She's 3. Mrs. Ashford, truly we're going. Sophia, Victoria repeated, crouching down to the little girl's level, still holding Emma. Would you like to stay for the party? Rosa's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, Victoria thought she might refuse. The housekeeper glanced around the elaborate ballroom, at the expensive decorations and untouched buffet, then down at her daughter's simple dress and her own work clothes. Mrs. Ashford, we couldn't possibly, this is clearly for we're not, Rosa stammered, her accent becoming more pronounced with her nervousness. Please, Victoria heard herself say, and was surprised by the raw honesty in her voice. Everyone else canceled. Emma has been sitting here for an hour without a single person to celebrate with her. You'd actually be doing me a favor. Sophia, blissfully unaware of the social complexities swirling around her, had already wiggled free from her mother's arms and toddled toward Emma with a fearless determination only a 3-year-old could muster. Baby. I see baby. Emma squealed with delight and reached for the older girl. Victoria found herself setting her daughter down on the soft carpet that had been laid out specifically for crawling babies and toddlers to play on. Within seconds, the two children were facing each other, Emma babbling her nonsense language while Sophia chattered back as though they understood each other perfectly. Look, Mama, Sophia called out, pointing at the towering balloon archway. Is like Princess Castle. Rosa stood frozen, torn between her place as an employee and the unmistakable joy on her daughter's face. Victoria could see the internal struggle. This woman had probably spent her entire life learning to be invisible in houses like this, to never presume, to never cross the invisible lines between those who served and those who were served. Victoria made a decision that surprised even herself. She walked to Rosa and gently touched her arm. Please stay. Not as my housekeeper. As my guest. As Emma's guest. I have enough food here to feed 50 people, entertainment that cost more than I care to admit, and a photographer who's being paid whether he takes pictures or not. Let the girls enjoy it. But I'm not dressed for. Rosa gestured at her simple jeans and cotton shirt, still clutching the container she'd supposedly come to retrieve. You're dressed like a mom, Victoria said softly. Which is more than I can say for myself. It was true. Victoria wore a designer dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent, stiletto heels that were already making her feet ache, and jewelry that required its own insurance policy. She looked ready for a society event, not a one-year-old's birthday party. Rosa, in her comfortable clothes with her hair pulled back practically, actually looked like she could chase after a toddler without worrying about ruining anything. Rosa bit her lip, looking between her daughter and Victoria. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. I'm sure, Victoria said firmly. Then softer. Honestly, you'd be saving me from the most depressing afternoon of my life. Something shifted in Rosa's expression, perhaps recognition of one mother's vulnerability to another. She nodded slowly. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Ashford. This is very kind. Victoria, she corrected. Today, just call me Victoria. The coordinator appeared again, looking confused by the scene before her. Should we begin? Victoria looked at the two little girls on the floor. Sophia had found a stuffed unicorn from the pile of party favors and was showing it to Emma, who kept trying to grab it while giggling. They were having their own party already, oblivious to cakes and schedules and adult expectations. Yes, Victoria decided. Let's begin. What followed was perhaps the strangest party Victoria had ever attended. The professional photographer, initially confused by the small audience, got into the spirit and began snapping pictures of Emma and Sophia together. The two girls, despite their age difference, seemed to click immediately. Sophia was gentle with the baby, showing her toys and making silly faces that sent Emma into fits of giggles. The face painter, grateful to finally have someone to paint, transformed Sophia's face into a butterfly masterpiece. Sophia sat perfectly still, her eyes wide with wonder, while Emma watched from Victoria's lap, mesmerized. You want butterfly too, baby? Sophia asked Emma when it was done. She's a bit young for face paint, Victoria started to say, but then stopped herself. Why not? Why was she always so concerned about doing everything perfectly, following every rule? Actually, maybe just a little flower on her cheek? The face painter obliged, creating a delicate pink flower on Emma's chubby cheek. Emma immediately tried to touch it, smearing it slightly, and everyone laughed. It was imperfect and messy and absolutely beautiful. Rosa stood awkwardly to the side at first, unsure of her place in this strange scenario. Victoria noticed and made a point of inviting her to sit at the elaborately decorated table. Please help yourself to the food, Victoria said, gesturing at the catered spread. There's enough here to feed an army. Rosa filled a small plate with obvious reluctance, taking only tiny portions. Victoria noticed she kept glancing at Sophia, making sure her daughter wasn't breaking anything or being too wild. She's fine, Victoria assured her. That's what all this is for, children to enjoy. She's not used to. Rosa trailed off, looking around the ballroom. This is very beautiful, very special. Victoria followed her gaze, seeing the party through Rosa's eyes. What had felt like a monument to her failure now looked different. Yes, it was extravagant. Probably too extravagant for a one-year-old's party. But it was also joyful and colorful and full of wonder, exactly what childhood should be. Can I ask you something? Victoria said, sitting down across from Rosa at the table. It felt strange, this informal conversation with someone she'd barely spoken to beyond giving instructions about cleaning schedules. Rosa nodded, nervous. Why did everyone cancel? Victoria asked. And please be honest. I need to understand. Rosa looked uncomfortable, her eyes darting away. Mrs. Ashford, Victoria, I don't think. Please, Victoria said. I can handle it. Rosa was quiet for a long moment, watching Sophia and Emma play with bubbles that the balloon artist had started blowing for them. Finally, she spoke, her voice gentle but truthful. "People are afraid of you," Rosa said simply. "The other mothers at the classes and lessons they talk. They say you're too busy, too important, too demanding. They worry their children won't be good enough, won't behave perfectly." One mother said she didn't want her son to come because she was afraid if he cried or made a mess, you would judge her. The words hit Victoria like physical blows, but she'd asked for honesty. "Do you think I would have done that?" Rosa considered carefully. 6 months ago, when I started working here. Maybe. You were very exact about everything. Every detail had to be perfect. I was terrified of making mistakes. She paused. "But I've watched you with Emma. The way you are with her, when you think no one is watching, you're different. Softer. You sing to her with a terrible voice." Rosa smiled slightly. "You let her smash avocado into your expensive blouses. You're a good mother. But the outside world, they only see the other Victoria." Victoria felt tears prickling her eyes, but refused to let them fall. "I didn't know how to be both," she admitted. "Successful and soft. Strong and vulnerable. I thought I had to choose." "Maybe you don't have to choose," Rosa said quietly. "Maybe you just have to let people see all of you." They sat in silence for a moment, watching their daughters. Sophia was now pushing Emma around in one of the toy cars that had been set up for entertainment. Emma shrieked with glee, her birthday crown sliding sideways on her head. "Thank you," Victoria said finally. "For staying. For being honest. For giving Emma someone to celebrate with." "Thank you for inviting us," Rosa replied. "Sophia will remember this forever. A princess party in a real mansion." Victoria laughed, but it was tinged with sadness. "I just wanted her to have friends. To have a normal, happy childhood. I don't want her to grow up isolated like I was." "You were isolated growing up?" Rosa seemed surprised. Victoria nodded. "My parents were wealthy, demanding, always working. I had every material thing but no real friends. Everyone was either intimidated or after something. I swore my child would be different." She gestured at the empty chairs. "Looks like I'm repeating history." "Maybe not," Rosa said, and there was something knowing in her voice. "Look at them." Victoria looked. Emma and Sophia were now sitting together in the ball pit that had been set up in one corner, throwing plastic balls at each other and laughing hysterically. They'd forgotten about the adults entirely, lost in their own world of play and discovery. Today, Emma learned that parties are about connection, not perfection, Rosa said softly. "That's not a bad lesson." Victoria felt something crack open in her chest, some hard shell she'd built around herself years ago to survive in the business world. Rosa was right. Yes, the party had been a disaster by society's standards. But watching Emma's face light up every time Sophia smiled at her, hearing her daughter's pure, joyful laughter, that was success by the only measure that actually mattered. "Can I tell you something?" Victoria said impulsively. "I don't even know how to play. I schedule developmental activity time with Emma and sit there with flashcards and educational toys, but I don't know how to just play." Rosa's expression softened with understanding. "Would you like Sophia to teach you?" Before Victoria could answer, Sophia had noticed them talking and came running over, dragging Emma along by the hand. The baby toddled unsteadily, gripping Sophia's fingers for balance, both girls giggling. "Victoria," Sophia announced with the confidence of someone who'd just been told to use first names, "Emma and me want cake now." The cake cutting became a ceremony that bore no resemblance to the perfect photos Victoria had envisioned. The coordinator had initially arranged everything with precision, the cake positioned at the exact right angle for photographs, special candles that sparkled just so, a whole system for the perfect first birthday cake smash photo that was currently trending on social media. But Sophia had other ideas. "Baby should touch cake," she declared, climbing onto a chair and pointing at the elaborate 5-tier confection. "It's her birthday. She should play with it." The coordinator looked horrified. Rosa immediately moved to intervene, gently trying to coax Sophia away from the expensive cake. Sophia, mi amor, that's not how we… Actually, Victoria interrupted, surprising herself again. She's absolutely right. Everyone turned to stare at her. The coordinator, the staff, Rosa, even the photographer paused mid-adjustment of his lens. Victoria walked to Emma and picked her up, carrying her toward the cake. This is a first birthday party. Emma should get to smash the cake. Isn't that what one-year-olds do? But Mrs. Ashford, the coordinator, protested. This cake cost… I don't care what it cost, Victoria said, and she meant it. It's cake. It's meant to be eaten and enjoyed, not preserved like a museum piece. She set Emma in her high chair and pulled it close to the enormous cake. The coordinator scrambled to at least remove the upper tiers, leaving just the bottom layer for Emma's destruction. But Victoria stopped her. Leave it, she said. If we're doing this, we're really doing it. Sophia bounced with excitement. Can I help, Victoria? Can I show Emma how? Victoria looked at Rosa, who seemed torn between the impropriety of letting her daughter touch something so expensive and the joy shining on Sophia's face. Victoria made the decision for her. Absolutely, she said, pulling another chair up to the table. Every baby needs a cake-smashing coach. What followed was chaos, beautiful, messy, perfectly imperfect chaos. Sophia carefully stuck her finger into the frosting first, showing Emma it was okay. Emma watched with wide eyes, then tentatively reached out one tiny hand and touched the cake. Her face lit up as the frosting squished between her fingers. More, Sophia encouraged. Use both hands. Soon both girls were covered in cake and frosting, laughing hysterically. Emma had buttercream in her hair, on her designer birthday dress, smeared across her face. Sophia wasn't much better. They looked absolutely ridiculous. They looked absolutely perfect. The photographer, to his credit, captured every moment. These wouldn't be the posed, pristine photos Victoria had imagined, but they were real. Emma's first birthday would be remembered not as a sterile, perfect event, but as the day she learned that joy could be messy. Victoria found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. She pulled out her phone and started taking her own pictures, wanting to capture this from her perspective, not just the photographer's. Victoria, you try. Sophia called out, holding up a handful of cake. Oh, I don't think. Victoria started, but Sophia was already approaching with her frosting-covered hands outstretched. It's a party, Sophia insisted with the irrefutable logic of a 3-year-old. Everyone should have cake. Before Victoria could protest, Sophia had smeared a streak of frosting across Victoria's cheek. There was a moment of stunned silence. Rosa went pale, clearly terrified her daughter had just committed some unforgivable breach of etiquette. But Victoria started laughing. She scooped up some frosting and dabbed it on Sophia's nose in return. You're absolutely right. Everyone should have cake. Sophia squealed with delight and ran back to Emma, declaring, Your mama is funny. Rosa exhaled with relief, but Victoria could see tears glistening in the other woman's eyes. Thank you, Rosa whispered, for being kind to her, for not making her feel less than. Less than? Victoria repeated, confused. Rosa gestured around the ballroom. This world, it's not ours. Usually people like us, we clean up after the party. We don't get invited to it. The words hit Victoria hard. She'd been so focused on her own isolation, her own rejection, that she hadn't considered the privilege inherent in even having the option to throw such an extravagant party. Rosa worked multiple jobs just to make ends meet, yet she'd never complained, never asked for anything extra. And here was her daughter, finding joy in the same party that had made Victoria feel like a failure. I'm sorry, Victoria said quietly. I've been so blind. You've worked here for 6 months, and I never even asked if you had children. You were always kind, Rosa said diplomatically. You paid fair wages on time. That's more than many people do. Kind. Victoria shook her head. I was distant. Professional. I treated you like a function instead of a person. Rosa didn't disagree, which told Victoria everything she needed to know. Tell me about Sophia, Victoria said, sitting down at the table and genuinely waiting for the answer. Tell me about yourself. Rosa seemed uncertain at first, as though this might be a test. But slowly, she began to talk. She told Victoria about fleeing an abusive relationship 2 years ago, about coming to this country with nothing but Sophia and a desperate hope for a better life. She described working 3 different cleaning jobs before finding the position at the Ashford estate, which paid enough that she could cut down to 2 jobs. Sophia stays with my neighbor during the day, Rosa explained. Mrs. Chun, she's kind, but she's old and tired. Sophia watches a lot of television. I dream of putting her in a good preschool, somewhere she can learn and play with other children, but the cost. She trailed off, looking embarrassed. I'm sorry, you don't need to hear. I want to hear, Victoria interrupted. Please continue. Rosa talked about Sophia's love of books, even though they could only afford a few from the thrift store. About how Sophia talked constantly about wanting a friend to play with. About the guilt Rosa felt every day, wondering if her daughter was missing out on the childhood she deserved. As Victoria listened, she saw herself reflected in Rosa's words. The same fears, the same guilt, the same desperate desire to give their daughters what they themselves had lacked. The difference was just money. Victoria had it, Rosa didn't. But the love was identical. The worry was identical. The hope was identical. What if Sophia came here a few times a week? Victoria said, impulsively. You're already here cleaning. Sophia could play with Emma. We have that whole playroom I had designed that Emma mostly ignores because she has no one to share it with. Rosa's eyes widened. Mrs. Ashford. Victoria, she corrected. And I'm serious. Emma needs a friend. You just told me Sophia needs children to play with. This solves both problems. I couldn't ask you to babysit while I work, Rosa protested. That's not fair to you. I'm not babysitting, Victoria clarified. I'm setting up a playdate for my daughter. You'd actually be doing me a favor. And honestly, watching you with Sophia today, you're so natural with children. Maybe you could teach me a few things. You want me to teach you? Rosa looked stunned. I have an MBA from Harvard, Victoria said wryly. But I don't know how to build a blanket fort or make up silly songs, or any of the things I've watched you do with the girls this afternoon. So, yes, I want you to teach me. Before Rosa could respond, the sound of excited barking drew their attention to the windows. The petting zoo handlers were bringing some of the animals closer to the house, hoping the children would want to interact with them. Sophia's face pressed against the glass, her eyes huge. Mama, look. Ponies. Real ponies. Do you want to go pet them? Victoria asked. Sophia nodded, so vigorously her whole body moved. Rosa started to stand, but Victoria gestured for her to stay. Let me take them. You've been chasing after Sophia all day, I'm sure. Take a break. Eat something. The food really is excellent. She scooped up Emma, now thoroughly covered in cake, and held out her hand to Sophia. Come on, birthday girls. Let's meet some ponies. Sophia hesitated, looking at her mother for permission. Rosa nodded, and Sophia immediately grabbed Victoria's hand with complete trust. Something about that tiny hand in hers made Victoria's heart swell. They made quite a picture walking out to the garden. Victoria in her designer dress now smeared with frosting, carrying a cake-covered baby, holding hands with a 3-year-old in a simple dress with butterfly face paint. The handlers did a double take, clearly not expecting this. These are very friendly ponies, one handler said, leading forward a small white pony with a gentle expression. This is Snowball. Would you like to pet her? Sophia approached cautiously at first, reaching out one small hand to touch the pony's soft nose. Snowball snuffled her palm, and Sophia giggled with delight. She likes me, Sophia announced. Emma wiggled in Victoria's arms, wanting to be part of the action. Victoria carefully held her closer so she could pat the pony's mane with her chubby hands. Emma made her excited squealing sound and grabbed a fistful of white mane, holding on until Victoria gently untangled her fingers. "Gentle," Victoria murmured. "Nice touches." "I teach baby gentle," Sophia offered, demonstrating by softly stroking the pony's neck. "Like this, see?" Victoria watched as Sophia patiently showed Emma how to pet the animal, her 3-year-old seriousness adorable in its intensity. This child had so much love to give, so much natural warmth and kindness. And she'd almost missed knowing her because she'd been too caught up in her own world to notice the people right in front of her. They spent the next hour in the garden, meeting rabbits and goats, and even a small pig that Sophia declared was the cutest thing ever. The afternoon's sun turned golden, casting everything in warm light. The photographer followed at a distance, capturing moments Victoria knew she'd treasure forever. When Emma started to get fussy, obviously tired from all the excitement, Victoria carried her back inside. Sophia followed, holding onto the hem of Victoria's dress like she'd done it 100 times before. Rosa had been watching from the windows, and she met them at the door with warm washcloths to clean up the cake remnants. "You two are a mess," she said fondly, wiping Sophia's face. "It was the best mess ever," Sophia declared. "Right, Victoria?" "Right," Victoria agreed, letting Rosa clean Emma's sticky hands. "The very best mess." As Rosa gently cleaned her daughter, Victoria noticed how carefully she treated the washcloth, folding it neatly when she was done. These were small things, automatic things, but they spoke to a life where nothing was wasted, where even the simplest items had value. "Rosa," Victoria said quietly, "I meant what I said earlier. About Sophia coming here to play with Emma. I'd like to do that regularly, if you're comfortable with it." Rosa met her eyes, searching for something, sincerity, perhaps, or hidden motives. Whatever she found must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. "I think Sophia would love that," she said. "And maybe it would be good for all of us." The party wound down as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that filtered through the ballroom's tall windows. Emma had fallen asleep in Victoria's arms, her head heavy against her mother's shoulder, tiny snores punctuating the quiet. Sophia was starting to fade too, rubbing her eyes but fighting the exhaustion because she didn't want the magical day to end. The event staff began cleaning up, efficiently dismantling the elaborate decorations. Victoria felt a pang watching them pack away the party that had cost a small fortune and had been attended by exactly 2 children. But looking down at Emma's peaceful face, still streaked with dried frosting, Victoria realized she didn't regret a single dollar spent. "We should go," Rosa said softly, standing with Sophia in her arms. "It's getting late, and we've taken up so much of your day." "You haven't taken anything," Victoria corrected. "You gave me something. You gave Emma something." Rosa smiled, but Victoria could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the kind that came from working multiple jobs, raising a child alone, and carrying worries that money could solve but dignity wouldn't let her voice. An idea had been forming in Victoria's mind throughout the afternoon, growing stronger with each interaction, each moment of watching Rosa with her daughter. It was impulsive, perhaps crazy, but Victoria had built a billion-dollar company on trusting her instincts. And her instincts were screaming at her now. "Rosa, wait," Victoria said as the other woman turned to leave. "I have a proposition for you." Rosa turned back, wariness flickering across her face. Victoria realized she'd probably heard that phrase before in contexts that made her uncomfortable. She hurried to clarify. "A job proposition," Victoria said. "A real one. Hear me out before you answer." She carried Emma to a chair and sat down, gesturing for Rosa to do the same. After a moment's hesitation, Rosa sat, settling Sophia in her lap. "You said you work 3 jobs," Victoria began. "Cleaning here, cleaning 2 other places, correct?" Rosa nodded. 3 days a week here, 2 days at an office building downtown, and weekend evenings at a restaurant. And Sophia stays with your neighbor all that time? Mrs. Chun is very kind. I'm not questioning her kindness, Victoria said gently. But you miss Sophia. And she misses you. I can see it. Rosa's eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them back. I do what I must. What if you didn't have to? Victoria leaned forward. What if you worked just one job here, but it wasn't cleaning? What if you were Emma's nanny? A real nanny, with a proper salary, benefits, vacation time. You'd bring Sophia with you. The girls could grow up together. You get to be with your daughter all day, and I'd get help raising mine. Rosa stared at her, mouth slightly open. Mrs. Ashford. Victoria. Victoria, Rosa corrected herself. I'm not a trained nanny. I have no certifications, no. You're a mother, Victoria interrupted. You're patient, kind, creative, and most importantly, you know how to play. How to make a child feel loved. That's worth more than any certification.
She paused.
And truthfully, I need help. Real help. Not just someone to watch Emma while I work, but someone to teach me how to be the mother I want to be. You're already a good mother, Rosa said softly. I'm trying to be, Victoria admitted. But today showed me how much I don't know. How much I've been missing. You talked about Sophia wanting friends. Emma needs that too. And I need someone to help me understand what childhood should look like. Mine was cold and structured. I don't want that for Emma. Sophia, who had been quietly listening to the adult conversation with 3-year-old wisdom, piped up. Mama, you could play with Emma every day. And I could play too. Rosa looked at her daughter, then back at Victoria. This is very generous, but I can't accept charity. It's not charity, Victoria said firmly. I'm offering you a job because I need you. Emma needs you. And yes, I can afford to pay you more than you're making working 3 separate jobs, but that's not charity. That's just fair compensation for valuable work. She softened her tone. Please at least consider it. We can discuss salary, hours, whatever you need. But don't say no because of pride. I'm certainly swallowing mine by admitting I need help. The coordinator approached hesitantly. Mrs. Ashford? We're almost done packing up. Is there anything else you need? Victoria looked around the ballroom, now half dismantled. The cake, or what remained of it, sat in its destroyed glory on the table, a monument to the afternoon's chaos and joy. The party favors, meant for 20 children, filled several boxes. The party favors, Victoria said suddenly. And the leftover food. Rosa, is there a community center or shelter near where you live? Rosa nodded slowly. There's a community center where many immigrant families go. They have a children's program on weekends. Perfect, Victoria decided. Pack all of this up and deliver it there. The favors, the food, everything except the cake. We're keeping that mess as evidence. She smiled. Tell them it's from Emma's birthday party, and we wanted to share the celebration. The coordinator made notes, and Victoria turned back to Rosa. Think about my offer. But regardless of your answer, I meant what I said about Sophia coming to play with Emma. You're welcome here anytime. Both of you. Rosa was quiet for a long moment, and Victoria could see emotions warring on her face. Hope and fear, desire and doubt. Finally, she spoke. Can I ask you something honestly? Of course. Why? Rosa's voice was almost a whisper. Why would you do this for us? We're nobody to you. Victoria looked down at Emma, sleeping peacefully in her arms. When she answered, her voice carried the weight of new understanding. Because today, when everyone else abandoned us, you stayed. Not because you had to, you were planning to leave. You stayed because your daughter wanted to play with mine. Because you saw 2 people sitting alone in a room full of everything money can buy and nothing that really matters, and you chose kindness. She met Rosa's eyes directly. And because watching you with Sophia today, I realized what I've been doing wrong. I've been trying to give Emma everything except what she actually needs. someone to show her that love matters more than perfection. That joy is found in messy cake and silly games, not pristine photo opportunities.
You know that.
You live that every day. I live that because I have no choice, Rosa said quietly. I can't afford perfect. Maybe perfect is overrated, Victoria replied. My parents gave me every material advantage. Private schools, tutors, music lessons, art classes. But they never gave me what Sophia has. They never got on the floor to play with me. Never let me make a mess. Never told me I was enough exactly as I was. She paused. I don't want that for Emma. And I can't give her what I never learned. But you can. Sophia, growing impatient with adult conversation, slid off her mother's lap and walked over to Victoria. She gently patted Emma's arm. Baby's sleeping, she observed wisely. She had a good birthday. The best, Victoria agreed, smiling at the little girl. Next year, I come again? Sophia asked hopefully. To Emma's birthday? Next year and every year, Victoria promised, looking at Rosa over Sophia's head. If your mama says yes to being Emma's nanny, you'll be here almost every day. Every day. Sophia's eyes went wide. Mama, say yes. Please, please, please. Rosa laughed despite herself, pulling Sophia into a hug. Mi amor, it's not that simple. But it could be, Victoria said. It really could be. I know this is sudden. I know I haven't been the warmest employer. But I'm asking you to take a chance on me, on us. Let me pay you fairly for doing something we both know you're brilliant at, loving children and helping them grow. What would the salary be? Rosa asked, and Victoria could hear the practical mother beneath the question, calculating whether this dream could actually become reality. Victoria named a figure that made Rosa's eyes widen. It was more than she made from all 3 jobs combined, plus benefits Victoria rarely offered but would gladly provide: health insurance, paid vacation, even a retirement plan. That's too much, Rosa protested automatically. It's what you're worth, Victoria countered. And honestly, it's less than I'd pay a nanny from one of those elite agencies who'd show up with credentials but no heart. You have what matters most. She stood, still cradling Emma, and held out her free hand to Rosa. Think about it. But know that either way, you and Sophia are welcome here.
Today changed something for me.
It showed me what I've been missing, what Emma's been missing. And I'm not going back to the way things were. Rosa looked at Victoria's outstretched hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she stood and shook it. I'll think about it, she said. And thank you. For today. For seeing us. For letting Sophia be part of Emma's special day. Thank you for staying, Victoria replied. You have no idea what it meant. But looking at Rosa's expression, Victoria thought maybe she did know. Maybe she understood loneliness and isolation in her own way, understood what it meant to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be judged before being known. Their circumstances were different, but the ache was the same. The coordinator finished supervising the cleanup and approached with a tablet. Mrs. Ashford, I just need your signature to finalize the invoice. Victoria glanced at the total, astronomical for a party attended by 2 children. But she signed without hesitation. Worth every penny, she said, and meant it. As Rosa prepared to leave, Sophia suddenly ran back to Emma and very gently kissed the sleeping baby's forehead. Bye-bye, baby Emma, she whispered. See you soon. Emma stirred slightly but didn't wake, just made a small contented sound and snuggled deeper into Victoria's shoulder. Victoria walked Rosa and Sophia to the door, where their modest car sat in the circular driveway, looking small and out of place next to the estate's grandeur. But as Victoria watched them drive away, Sophia waving enthusiastically from the back window until they disappeared from sight, she didn't see the disparity in their circumstances. She saw hope.
She saw possibility.
She saw, for the first time in a very long time, the potential for real connection. Emma woke as Victoria carried her upstairs to her nursery, blinking sleepily and looking around with confusion until she focused on her mother's face. Then she smiled, that pure, uncomplicated smile that said everything was right in her world because her person was holding her. "Did you have a good birthday, sweet girl?" Victoria asked softly, laying Emma on the changing table to get her cleaned up and ready for bed. Emma babbled something that sounded like agreement, waving her hands in the air. As Victoria changed her daughter's diaper and pajamas, she found herself singing the same off-key lullaby she sang every night, the one she'd been too embarrassed to sing when she thought someone might hear. But tonight, she didn't care about being perfect. She'd spent the afternoon covered in cake, playing in a petting zoo, letting a 3-year-old direct the party she'd spent weeks planning. And it had been more beautiful than any of her carefully orchestrated plans could have been. "I think we made a friend today," Victoria told Emma as she settled her daughter into the crib. "Maybe 2 friends. What do you think? Would you like Sophia to come play with you?" Emma's response was to yawn widely and grab her favorite stuffed elephant, cuddling it close. But Victoria could have sworn she saw contentment in her daughter's expression, the same contentment she'd seen when Sophia had held her hand. Victoria stood by the crib for a long time after Emma fell asleep, watching her daughter breathe, thinking about the day's unexpected turns. She'd thrown an elaborate party that nobody came to, and it had ended up being exactly what she needed. Monday morning arrived with the usual chaos of Victoria's professional life, her phone buzzing before dawn with urgent messages from 3 time zones, her assistant sending the daily schedule that was packed from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., market reports demanding immediate attention. The business world didn't stop for birthday parties or personal revelations. But something was different. Victoria found herself hesitating before diving into emails, instead walking down the hall to Emma's nursery. Her daughter was just waking up, standing in her crib and babbling to her stuffed animals. When she saw Victoria, her face lit up. "Mama." Victoria scooped her up, inhaling that sweet baby smell, feeling Emma's warm weight against her. How many mornings had she rushed through this moment, mentally already in her first meeting, while physically going through the motions of breakfast and handoff to the nanny service she used during work hours? Too many. "Good morning, sunshine," Victoria said, carrying Emma to the window where early morning light filtered through. "Should we see if the bunnies from your party are still in the garden?" They weren't. Of course, the petting zoo had packed up Saturday evening. But Emma didn't know that, and they spent several minutes looking out the window together, Victoria making up stories about where the animals might have gone.
"To another party," she said.
To see other children. When her phone rang, her business partner calling about the Tokyo acquisition, Victoria made a decision that would have been unthinkable a week ago. She let it go to voicemail. Emma was more important than Tokyo. This moment, watching her daughter point excitedly at birds in the garden, was more important than any deal. She could call back in half an hour. The thought was revolutionary and terrifying, and somehow completely right. By the time Victoria made it downstairs with Emma, having actually taken time to play with blocks and read 2 board books, her assistant Maria was already there with coffee and a worried expression. "You missed the Tokyo call," Maria said carefully. "And the board meeting prep starts in an hour." "I know," Victoria replied, settling Emma in her high chair and actually sitting down for breakfast instead of grabbing something on the go. "I'll call Tokyo back in a few minutes. The prep can wait." Maria blinked, surprised. In 3 years of working together, Victoria had never made anything wait for any reason. "Is everything all right?" "Actually," Victoria said slowly, "I think it might be. Or, at least, it's going to be." She explained what she wanted to do. Restructure her schedule to include real time with Emma, not just the hours before dawn and after dark when her daughter was sleeping. She wanted to reduce her board commitments, delegate more to her leadership team, and be present for the moments that mattered. "I've been so focused on building something for Emma's future," Victoria said, "that I've been missing her present. That ends now." Maria looked both impressed and concerned. "The board isn't going to like this." The board doesn't have a 1-year-old daughter, Victoria replied. I do. And she's only going to be 1 once. I've already missed too much. She made the Tokyo call from the breakfast table, with Emma babbling and throwing Cheerios in the background. At first, she apologized for the noise. Then she stopped herself. Actually, I'm not sorry, she said to the business partner on the other end. I'm having breakfast with my daughter. The deal is important, but she's more important. We can discuss the terms this afternoon. There was surprised silence on the other end, then cautious agreement. Victoria hung up feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Balance. The morning continued in this strange new rhythm. Victoria working from home, taking conference calls from her study, but emerging between them to check on Emma, to play for 10 minutes, to just be present. The world didn't end. The company didn't collapse. Everything she thought was urgent and critical somehow managed to survive her divided attention. At noon, the doorbell rang. Victoria's heart jumped, hoping it was Rosa, with an answer to her job offer. But when she opened the door, it was a delivery person with an enormous box. For Emma Ashford, the delivery person said, checking their tablet. From Sofia Rodriguez. Confused, Victoria signed for the package and brought it inside. Emma, hearing the commotion, came toddling over on unsteady legs, her face curious. Inside the box was a handmade card, clearly crafted by Sophia with help from her mother. Crayon flowers decorated the front, and inside, in Rosa's neat handwriting, Dear Emma, thank you for the best party ever. Love, Sophia. Beneath it, in a child's unsteady scrawl, Sophia. But the real gift was underneath the card, a stuffed unicorn, slightly worn, clearly well-loved. And a note from Rosa. This was Sophia's favorite toy, but she insisted Emma should have it because friends share the best things. We can't afford much, but wanted to say thank you for Saturday. Victoria felt tears welling up. This toy was probably one of Sophia's few possessions, and she'd given it to Emma without hesitation. The generosity of it, from a family that had so little, made Victoria's elaborate party seem almost embarrassing in comparison. Emma immediately grabbed the unicorn, hugging it close and making happy sounds. Victoria pulled out her phone and took a picture, then sent it to Rosa's number, which she'd gotten for scheduling purposes, but never used. Emma loves it, but are you sure Sophia wants to part with it? The response came quickly. She was sure. Said Emma is her friend now. Friends share. Victoria stared at that message for a long time. Friends share. When had she last had a friend who shared selflessly, expecting nothing in return? When had she last been that kind of friend to anyone? She typed back, Have you thought about my offer? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, can we talk in person? I have questions. Come over today, Victoria replied immediately. Bring Sophia. The girls can play while we talk details. An hour later, Rosa arrived with Sophia, who ran immediately to find Emma. The 2 girls embraced like old friends separated for years instead of just 2 days. They disappeared into the playroom, their happy shrieks echoing through the house. Victoria and Rosa sat in the kitchen, not the formal dining room, not Victoria's study, but the warm, comfortable kitchen where real conversations happened. Coffee, Victoria offered. Please, Rosa said, and they settled across from each other at the island. I'm nervous, Rosa admitted. This job, it would change everything for us. Sophia could go to a good preschool. I could actually save money. We could move out of our tiny apartment into something with a yard. She twisted her coffee cup in her hands. But what if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? What if you succeed? Victoria countered gently. What if you're exactly what Emma and I need? Why me? Rosa asked. You could hire anyone. Someone with degrees and credentials and... Because Emma laughed more on Saturday than I've heard in weeks, Victoria interrupted. Because Sophia shares her favorite toy with children she's known for one day. Because you stayed at a party you weren't invited to and made it more meaningful than anything I could have planned. She paused. And because I need someone who'll tell me when I'm being too rigid, too focused on perfection instead of presence. Will you do that? Rosa met her eyes. You really want me to? I really want you to. They spent the next hour discussing details, salary, hours, responsibilities. Victoria explained she wanted Rosa to be more than just a nanny. She wanted her to be a partner in raising Emma, someone who'd feel comfortable speaking up when Victoria fell back into old patterns. I'll probably mess up, Victoria admitted. Probably schedule educational development time when we should just be playing. You'll need to call me on it. I can do that, Rosa said with a small smile. If you promise to be patient with me while I figure this out. I've only ever been a mother to Sophia. Being responsible for your daughter, too, that's a big trust. You already earned that trust, Victoria said. Saturday proved it. They shook hands on the deal, and Victoria felt something settle in her chest, a rightness she hadn't felt in her professional life in years. This wasn't about business or profit margins or market domination. This was about building something real, a family, a community, a childhood for Emma that included joy and mess and real human connection. From the playroom came a crash followed by immediate crying, Emma's distinct wail of surprise and hurt. Both women jumped up and rushed to the room. They found Sophia kneeling beside Emma, who'd apparently taken a tumble from a small slide. Sophia was patting Emma's back awkwardly, her face scrunched with concern. Is okay, baby Emma, Sophia was saying. You okay? No cry. Victoria's instinct was to scoop Emma up immediately, to fix the problem, to prevent any further upset. But Rosa touched her arm gently. Wait, Rosa murmured. Watch. Sophia carefully helped Emma sit up, then did something that surprised Victoria. She pretended to fall down herself, making an exaggerated oof sound. Emma stopped crying mid-sob, watching with wide eyes. Sophia did it again, and this time Emma giggled wetly through her tears. See, Sophia said triumphantly. Falling is silly. We all fall. And just like that, Emma's crisis was over. She was laughing instead of crying, reaching for Sophia instead of her mother. Rosa glanced at Victoria. That's what siblings do. They teach each other that it's okay to fall, because someone will be there to make you laugh about it. Siblings, Victoria repeated softly. Was that what Emma and Sophia could become? Not by blood, but by choice and circumstance and spending their days together? If that's okay, Rosa added quickly. I don't want to presume. It's more than okay, Victoria said, watching the two girls play together, Emma already having forgotten her tumble. It's perfect. Over the following weeks, their new arrangement began. Rosa started working as Emma's nanny, bringing Sophia with her each day. The house, which had always been immaculately clean and quiet, became something else entirely, lived in, laughed in, occasionally messy. Victoria found herself restructuring her entire life around this new rhythm. She still worked, still ran her company, still made decisions that affected thousands of employees and millions in revenue. But she also built pillow forts. She learned to make silly voices while reading stories. She got on the floor and played, accepting that her expensive clothes might get stained with paint or grass. She learned to let go of perfect. Rosa, for her part, brought warmth into every corner of the house. She cooked meals that filled the kitchen with delicious smells, taught Victoria family recipes from her homeland, and created routines that felt comfortable instead of rigid. The girls thrived under her care, developing their own little friendship full of made-up games and secret jokes. But more than that, Rosa became someone Victoria could talk to honestly, about the pressures of running a company, about the guilt of being a single mother, about the fear of failing her daughter. And Rosa shared her own stories, her own fears, her own hopes. They became, against all odds and expectations, friends. One evening, about a month after Emma's birthday, Victoria came home from a particularly brutal board meeting to find the house transformed. Rosa had helped the girls make a welcome home banner from construction paper and crayons. Dinner was waiting, nothing fancy, just chicken and rice, but it smelled like home. Emma and Sophia rushed to greet her, both talking at once about their day, about the birds they'd seen in the garden, about the fort they'd built. Mama, we made you a picture," Emma announced, holding up a paper covered in scribbles. "It's you," Sophia explained helpfully.
See?
"That's your smile." Victoria took the drawing, looking at the abstract collection of lines that supposedly represented her. To anyone else, it would look like random marks made by a 1-year-old. To her, it was priceless. "It's beautiful," she said, and meant it. "The most beautiful picture I've ever received." Rosa appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She took one look at Victoria's face and said, "Bad meeting?" "The worst," Victoria admitted. "The board wants me to travel to 3 different countries in 2 weeks. I told them no." "You told the board no?" Rosa looked impressed. "What did they say?" "They weren't happy," Victoria said wryly. "But I stood firm. I have a 1-year-old daughter. I have a life outside that boardroom. They need to respect that." "Good for you," Rosa said firmly. Then, more softly, "Emma missed you today. She kept going to the window, looking for your car." Victoria's heart clenched. "She did. She loves you so much," Rosa said. "Both girls do. You've become important to Sophia too, you know. She talks about you constantly." "Victoria did this," Victoria said that. "I love them too," Victoria said, surprised by how easily the words came. "Both of them." That night, after dinner and baths and bedtime stories, after Emma and Sophia were both asleep, Sophia now stayed some nights in the guest room next to Emma's nursery when Rosa had to work an evening. Victoria found herself sitting with Rosa on the back patio, looking up at the stars. "Can I tell you something?" Victoria said. "Saturday, at the party that nobody came to, that was the worst and best day of my life." "How so?" Rosa asked. "The worst because it confirmed every fear I had about failing Emma, about being too isolated and cold to give her a real childhood. But the best because you stayed. Because you showed me that connection isn't about how many people show up or how perfect everything looks. It's about who shows up when it matters." Rosa was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something?"
I almost didn't come back that day.
I was so embarrassed, afraid Sophia would break something or make a mess. But I'm so glad I did. This job, this friendship, it's changed everything for us." "For me too," Victoria admitted. "I'd spent so long trying to prove I didn't need anyone, that I could do everything alone. But I was missing everything that made life worth living." They sat in comfortable silence, and Victoria thought about how much had changed in just a few weeks. Her business associates had noticed the difference. She was less abrasive in meetings, more willing to compromise, more focused on collaboration than domination. Some had commented that she seemed happier. She was happier. "Thank you," Victoria said finally, "for giving me this gift. For teaching me how to live, not just exist." Rosa smiled. "Thank you for seeing us. For making Sophia and me feel like we belong here." "You do belong here," Victoria said firmly. "This is your home too now. Both of you." And sitting there under the stars, in a house that was finally filled with love and laughter and real life, Victoria knew it was true. They'd all found what they needed most, not in elaborate parties or perfect plans, but in the simple act of showing up for each other. The invitations for Emma's 2nd birthday party went out 6 weeks in advance, and this time, Victoria had learned her lesson. There was no platinum edging, no courier delivery, no elaborate wording. Just simple cards with a hand-drawn picture, Sophia's artwork, carefully scanned, and straightforward information. Emma's 2nd birthday party. Casual backyard celebration. Cake, games, and fun. RSVP. She invited 10 families, not 20. Not business associates or networking opportunities. Just families from the community center where Rosa volunteered, where Sophia had made friends, where Victoria had slowly learned to be part of something bigger than herself. And people RSVP'd yes. Real yes, not the polite lies of the year before. Because over the past year, Victoria had changed. Not overnight, not all at once, but gradually, consistently. She'd shown up at community center events, had volunteered alongside Rosa, had let people see her not as the intimidating billionaire CEO, but as just another mom trying her best. She'd been awkward at first, unsure how to make small talk with other parents, uncertain of the unwritten rules of playground politics. But Rosa had guided her, Sophia had charmed everyone, and Emma had made friends naturally the way only toddlers can, by sharing toys and giggling at silly games. The morning of Emma's second birthday dawned bright and clear. Victoria woke early, not to check emails, but to help Rosa set up the backyard. They deliberately kept things simple: colorful balloons, a homemade cake. Victoria had learned to bake this year, though she'd burned the first 3 attempts, picnic tables borrowed from the community center, and activities that required more creativity than cash. Sophia and Emma were inseparable as always, running around the backyard in matching sundresses. Sophia had insisted they coordinate, and Victoria had taken both girls shopping together. They were inspecting every detail of the party setup, offering their toddler opinions on where things should go. "Balloons need to be more there," Sophia announced with 3-year-old authority, pointing to a different corner of the yard. Victoria dutifully moved the balloons. "And Emma says the presents should be under the tree," Sophia added, translating her younger friend's babbling as she always did. "The presents went under the tree." Rosa laughed, watching Victoria take orders from a 3-year-old. "She's got you wrapped around her finger." "Both of them do," Victoria admitted cheerfully. "And I wouldn't have it any other way." The truth was, life had become beautifully chaotic over the past year. Victoria's house was no longer a showplace but a home, scattered with toys, decorated with children's artwork, bearing the marks of being actually lived in. Her pristine white couches had given way to more practical furniture. Her formal dining room had become a craft room where paint spills were expected, not disasters. Her company had adjusted too. She'd promoted her COO to handle day-to-day operations, had restructured her schedule to include true work-life balance, and had become an advocate for parental leave and flexible schedules. Some board members had grumbled. Others had followed her lead, inspired by watching her success without the 80-hour work weeks. Turns out, she'd been more productive with boundaries than without them. Happier, clearer, more creative. All because she'd learned to stop working and start living. Guests started arriving at 11, and Victoria felt her stomach flutter with nerves. What if this year was like last year? What if people canceled at the last minute? But then the Johnsons arrived with their twin boys, who immediately joined Sophia and Emma in the bounce house Victoria had rented. Then the Martinez family with their daughter, who loved the same books as Emma. Then more families, carrying homemade dishes and simple gifts, greeting Rosa warmly and Victoria without the fear and distance of the year before. Victoria, Mrs. Chun, Rosa's elderly neighbor who'd watched Sophia before Rosa started working for Victoria, arrived bearing a beautiful homemade cake. "For the birthday girl. Traditional recipe from my homeland." Victoria hugged her, genuinely touched. Mrs. Chun had become part of their extended family over the past year, joining them for dinners and holidays. She taught Victoria to make dumplings and had taught both girls simple songs in Mandarin. By noon, the backyard was full of children laughing, parents chatting, music playing. It looked nothing like last year's elaborate setup. It was better. Victoria found herself standing beside Rosa, watching the chaos unfold. Sophia was organizing a group of children in some complicated game she'd invented. Emma was toddling after them, trying to keep up with the big kids, her face bright with determination and joy. "You did it," Rosa said softly. "You gave her exactly what she needed." "We did it," Victoria corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you." It was true. Over the past year, Rosa had become more than Emma's nanny, more than Victoria's employee. She was family. She was the sister Victoria had never had, the friend she'd spent her whole life seeking. They'd been through everything together. Emma's first steps, Sophia starting preschool, Victoria's crisis, when the board tried to push her out. She'd stood firm and they'd backed down. Rosa's ex-husband trying to reappear. They'd dealt with that legally and definitively. They'd built something rare and precious, a real, honest, supportive friendship across all the lines that supposedly divided them. "Can I have everyone's attention?" Victoria called out, clapping her hands. The chatter died down, and all faces turned to her. She felt a moment of the old nervousness. What if she said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing, wasn't good enough? But then Emma toddled over and grabbed her leg, and Sophia stood beside Rosa, and Victoria remembered why none of that mattered. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Emma's birthday," Victoria began. "Last year, I threw what I thought was the perfect party. Expensive, elaborate, precisely planned. And nobody came." There were a few uncomfortable murmurs, but Victoria pressed on. "Nobody except Rosa and Sophia," she continued, gesturing to them. "They weren't invited guests. Rosa was our housekeeper, and Sophia was just her daughter who happened to see the decorations. But they stayed. And in staying, they gave Emma and me the greatest gift we've ever received. They taught us about real connection, about what actually matters, about family you choose instead of circumstances you're born into." Rosa's eyes were glistening with tears. Sophia beamed, thrilled to be part of the story. "So this year, I wanted to do something different," Victoria said. "Rosa, Sophia, will you come here?" They walked over, confused. Victoria pulled out an envelope she'd been keeping in her pocket all morning. "This is for you," she said, handing it to Rosa. "But it's really for both of us." Rosa opened it with shaking hands, then gasped. Inside were legal documents, carefully prepared by Victoria's attorney over the past month. "You're making me Emma's legal guardian?" Rosa read aloud, stunned. "If anything ever happens to me, I want Emma to stay with you," Victoria explained. "Not with my distant relatives who barely know her. Not in the system. With you and Sophia, the people who love her most. The people who've been her family all along." Rosa was openly crying now, and even some of the guests were tearing up. "But there's more," Victoria continued. "I'm also setting up a trust for Sophia's education and future. She's as much a part of this family as Emma is. And I'm putting money into the community center so they can expand their programs for immigrant families so that what you did for Emma and me, we can help do for others." She paused, looking around at all the faces, some she'd known for only a few months, but all of whom had welcomed her once she'd stopped hiding behind walls of wealth and perfection. "I thought success meant having everything," Victoria said. "But real success is sharing everything. Thank you all for teaching me that. Thank you for giving Emma a real community. And thank you, Rosa and Sophia, for showing us what love actually looks like." The backyard erupted in applause. Sophia ran to Victoria and hugged her legs. Emma, not entirely sure what was happening but delighted by the excitement, clapped her chubby hands together. Rosa couldn't speak, could only embrace Victoria tightly while both women cried happy tears. "Thank you," Rosa finally whispered. "Thank you for seeing us. For changing our lives." "You changed mine first," Victoria whispered back. The party continued with a joy that was utterly genuine. The children played games that cost nothing, musical chairs, potato sack races, tag. They ate cake and got messy, and nobody worried about ruined clothes or perfect photos. The photographer Victoria had hired, the same one from last year, approached her during the chaos. "This is so different from last year," he observed. "Which set of photos do you think you'll treasure more?" Victoria looked at last year's professional shots on his tablet. Beautiful images of Emma and Sophia together, perfect compositions with golden lighting. Then she looked at this year's candids, children with frosting-smeared faces, grass stains on their party clothes, pure unfiltered joy.
Both, she decided.
Last year's photos remind me of where we started. This year's show me where we've arrived. I need both to understand the journey. As the sun began to set and families started to leave, each one thanked Victoria and Rosa for the party. Parents exchanged phone numbers, made plans for playdates, invited each other to other gatherings. Emma and Sophia hugged each departing child goodbye. Mrs. Johnson, one of the mothers Victoria had been most nervous about, pulled her aside before leaving. "I heard about last year," she admitted. "About how no one came to Emma's first birthday. I'm ashamed to say I was one of the people who didn't come. I'd RSVP'd yes and then canceled because I was intimidated by you." Victoria nodded, not surprised. "I understand. But you're different now," Mrs. Johnson continued. "Or maybe you're the same, and we're just finally seeing the real you. Either way, thank you for being brave enough to show us who you really are. It's inspired a lot of us to be more authentic, too." After the last guest left, Victoria, Rosa, Sophia, and Emma collapsed together on a blanket in the backyard, exhausted and happy. Emma was already dozing off, her head on Victoria's lap. Sophia was telling them a rambling story about something that had happened during the party, her voice growing sleepy. "Did Emma have a good birthday?" Rosa asked softly. Victoria looked around at the scattered decorations, the leftover cake, the signs of a party that had been lived and loved, not just photographed and posted. "The best," she said, "because it wasn't about the party. It was about the people." Rosa smiled. "You've learned a lot this year." "I had a good teacher," Victoria replied. "Actually, I had two good teachers." She looked at Sophia, now asleep beside Emma, the two girls holding hands even in sleep. They'd grown up together this year, had become the sisters they'd never had by birth. Emma's first words had been to Sophia. Sophia's drawings covered Victoria's home office walls. They were woven into each other's lives in ways that transcended any traditional definition of family. "What are you thinking?" Rosa asked, noticing Victoria's expression. "I'm thinking about how lonely I was a year ago," Victoria admitted. "How isolated and desperate and convinced I had to do everything alone. And I'm thinking about how full my life is now, not because of money or success or anything I can buy, but because you and Sophia showed me that the best things in life aren't things at all." "Hallmark should hire you," Rosa teased gently. Victoria laughed. "Too sappy." "Just sappy enough," Rosa assured her. "And true. You've changed our lives too, you know. Sophia has opportunities one never dreamed of. I have work I love, a home that feels safe, a friend I trust." "Family," Victoria corrected softly. "Not just a friend. Family." Rosa's eyes filled with tears again, happy tears that had become common over the past year. "Family," she agreed. They sat together as the stars began to appear, the two little girls sleeping peacefully between them. The house behind them glowed with warm light, no longer a cold mansion but a real home filled with laughter and love, and the beautiful mess of actual living. Victoria thought about the person she'd been a year ago, so focused on perfection, so afraid of showing weakness, so convinced that success meant never needing anyone. That woman had thrown an elaborate party for her daughter's first birthday and had watched it fail because she'd confused expense with value, precision with connection. But out of that failure had come something she never expected, everything she actually needed. "Thank you," Victoria said again, knowing she'd probably say it 1,000 more times and it still wouldn't be enough. "For what?" Rosa asked. "For coming to the party," Victoria said simply. "For staying when you could have left. For giving Emma and me a chance. For teaching us how to love better, live better, be better." "Thank you for letting us," Rosa replied. "For opening your home and your heart. For treating Sophia like your own daughter. For becoming the kind of person who makes the world softer and kinder." They didn't need to say more. They sat together under the stars, Two mothers who'd found each other across impossible divides, united by their love for their daughters and for the family they'd chosen to build together. Emma stirred in her sleep, mumbling something that sounded like Sophia. Sophia, still dreaming, squeezed Emma's hand tighter. And Victoria and Rosa looked at each other and smiled, thinking the same thing. This messy, imperfect, beautiful thing they'd built, this was what family was supposed to feel like. 1 year ago, nobody came to the billionaire's daughter's first birthday party, until a maid's toddler showed up and changed everything. Epilogue. 5 years later, Emma would be starting first grade, and Victoria would insist she attend the local public school instead of the exclusive private academy everyone expected. Sophia would be in third grade at the same school, walking Emma to her classroom every morning and eating lunch with her every day. Rosa would have her degree in early childhood education, paid for by Victoria, and would be opening a community preschool for immigrant families. Victoria would be her business partner and biggest supporter. The Ashford estate would host monthly community gatherings, with children running through the halls and the garden, making noise and mess and memories. Victoria would be known not as the cold CEO, but as the woman who'd transformed her home into a place of welcome and warmth. And every year on Emma's birthday, they would tell the story of her first party, when nobody came except the people who mattered most, and everything changed. But that was still in the future. For now, on this perfect evening of Emma's second birthday, Victoria held her sleeping daughter close and looked at the family she'd found in the most unexpected way. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that she was the luckiest person alive. Not because of her billions, but because on a day when she'd felt utterly alone, someone had shown up. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change a life. One person showing up when everyone else walks away. One small act of kindness that ripples outward forever. One little girl who saw another little girl and said simply, "Baby birthday?" And meant, "You're not alone. I'm here. We all need each other." That was the lesson Victoria had learned, the gift she'd been given, the truth that had transformed everything. The best things in life aren't the ones you plan for. They're the ones that show up unexpectedly and change you forever.